Have you ever seen or noticed an error like this? CORS policy blocked the request. And then he spent the next 2 hours adding random annotations by going through Stack Overflow or nowadays ChatGPT or any AI. Most developers know how to fix CORS. Very few understand why it happens. Today we will understand CORS in the easiest way possible. We will understand why it happens, who actually blocks the request during a CORS error, what is origin, and what is preflight request. And once you understand this concept, you will never memorize it again. So let's start with a real world example. Imagine you live in a gated society. Your friend comes from another society. When he reaches the gate, the security guards stop him. The guard asks, "Who are you? Why are you here? Do you have permission?" And blah blah blah. Only after verification does the guard allow him inside. Keep this example in mind because that's exactly how CORS works. Now let's move to a real application. Suppose front-end React application runs on localhost 3000. Backend Spring Boot application runs on localhost 8080. Now React sends a request to Spring Boot application. Now the question is, will Spring Boot reject the request? And the answer is no. Spring Boot receives it normally. And this is first misunderstanding most developers have. Spring Boot is not blocking the request. So who is blocking the request? The answer is browser. The browser itself acts like a security guard. The browser sees front-end origin, which is localhost 3000, and then browser sees back-end origin, which is localhost 8080, and says, "Wait a minute, the request is coming from a different origin. Does the backend allow it?" Only then does CORS comes into the picture. Now let's understand the word origin. Origin consists of three things: protocol, host, and port. For example, if you see here HTTP localhost colon 3000. So protocol is HTTP, host is localhost, port is 3000. Now compare the same URL with backend URL. If you see HTTP localhost is same. What is the different? Port is the different, 8080. And that's enough to make it a different origin. This surprises many developers. So remember this. Different port is equal to different origin. Means if port are different, you can say that it belongs from different origin. Now let's see what happens internally. React app sends a request to backend application. Browser intercepts it, and then browser asks backend, "Do you allow the request from localhost 3000?" Backend must respond with access control allow origin. If the backend says yes, localhost 3000 is allowed and browser allows the response. Otherwise, browser blocks it. One important point to notice. The backend already processed the request. The browser simply refuses to give the response to JavaScript. That's why you see a CORS error. Again, I'm repeating, the backend already processed the request, but the browser simply refuses to give the response to JavaScript. And that's why you see a CORS error. Now let's talk about pre-flight requests. This is the part that confuses everyone. Imagine you don't simply enter into the society. You first call the security guard and ask, "Can I come?" That's exactly what the browser does. Before sending some requests, it sends options request. This is called a pre-flight request. Browser asks, "Can I send put, delete, patch, custom headers, authorization token," and then backend respond yes or no. Only then does the actual request happen. So this was all about CORS, origin, pre-flight request. Now let's see how to configure CORS in Spring Boot. The easiest way is using cross origin annotation. So if you see here, I have added cross origin and I have passed the origin URL. So if you see here, I have passed localhost 3000. Now requests coming from localhost 3000 are allowed. Simple, right? But wait, in real projects, we don't usually add these annotations everywhere, which is a bad practice. Instead, we configure CORS globally. So if you see here, I have created one CORS config class annotated with @configuration annotation, and then I'm returning webMNC configurer. Here I have an override method which is add CORS mappings, which is accepting one parameter of type CORS registry. So inside this, two main things are happening. One is allowed origin, second one is allowed methods. So from this origin, what are the methods allowed? So for example, you want to allow some specific method. Let's say get and post. You don't want to allow put or delete or patch. Then you can specify only get and post. So allowed origin is I have given localhost 3000. Now every endpoint follows the same rule, which is much cleaner. Now there is another interview question, or you may itself ask question, can we write allowed origin star, which means instead of allowing this particular URL or particular origin, I can just simply pass star. So the answer is yes, you can pass the star. But should we really pass it? The answer is of course not. Because now every website on the internet can access your API. For public APIs, this may be fine. But for secured application, it's risky. So that's why it is advised to pass a specific origin. So let's quickly revise whatever we have learned so far. CORS does not block request. Browser block responses. Different port means different origin. Different protocol means different origin. Or different host means different origin. Browser act like a security guard, and backend must explicitly allow trusted origins. Means it should not allow star or all origins. And that's exactly what CORS is. Thank you for watching this video. Please follow for daily Spring Boot concepts.